Hello, hello, good morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We'll just give it the last sort of 10, 15 seconds for the last people to join. Hopefully everyone can hear us. If you can't, please drop us a note in the chat, or if you can, that'd be even better as well. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session. My name is Ben Smith. I'm a consultant here at IPI. Alongside me today is my colleague Isaac Richardson.
Hello, guys. Yes, I'm also here, a consultant here at IP Integration.
And together we're going to take you through today's topics with some tips and tricks and talking about some technologies that will enable contact centres to work smarter, not harder. Now, the session is only half an hour long. And it is quite fast paced. There's quite a lot of content, but please do drop any questions or comments as we go, and we'll cover them off at the end. Today's session is a continuation of a few that we've been running. Firstly, we were looking at utilising agent idle time to improve engagement and productivity in a contact centre. Then we were looking at how customers are able to sort of flutter between organisations and how we can harness data from internal and external sources to drive process and retention improvements. We looked at some workforce management technologies, really looking at the first step away from Excel spreadsheets onto the sort of first step on the path to fully blown workforce optimization. Today we're looking at key challenges for contact centres moving into next year, how organisations can get ahead of the technology adoption curve, and what that is expected to look like over the next 12 to 18 months. And lastly, quick plug for the next one we're running. We are talking about the technology briefly today, but we do have one coming up looking at wallboards in the contact centre, everything to do with data visualization, and we'll be sending details out about that as soon as they're confirmed. But for now, let me just hand over to Isaac, who's going to provide a little bit of context about who IPI are. We're possibly a company you've never heard of, but you've probably interacted with one of our technologies or maybe the outcome of one of our projects. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Ben. So yeah, as Ben says, you might not be familiar with us, but just sort of our mission statement at the top there, IPI has successfully deployed intelligent contact center solutions for over 2 decades, helping our customers to reduce operational cost and dramatically improve customer experience using the very best technologies. So very briefly to walk you through some of the stats that we've got at the bottom there. We've currently got over 300 active customers. These vary in size from sort of 10 contact center agents all the way up to over 1,000, all UK-based customers. And that equates to around 55,000 contact center agents dealing with 4 million daily transactions. Currently the largest independent contact center solutions provider in the UK. And just finally, a stat we're particularly proud of, that's why we've thrown it up there, a 98.7% customer retention rate. So hopefully what we're just trying to say here is we're very, very passionate about contact centers. This is really where we specialize, and hopefully we'll give you some useful tips, hints and tips for the new year.
Yeah, so what we're going to be covering today, these are the 5 challenges. Hopefully something on this screen resonated with some interest, otherwise you wouldn't be here. We have deliberately designed it to be short, and it's worth mentioning that at this point that a few of the organisations that we are speaking to are going through sort of some budget planning phases at the moment for next year. So maybe if you haven't got a budget at the moment, it might be a bit of food for thought for sort of areas for investment over the next sort of 12, 18 months or so. There is one very important concept we need to run through very quickly before we start as to why any of this is relevant, and that is something called contact optimization.
Absolutely. So contact optimization, this came about from us thinking about what is an optimized contact. And we were able to narrow that down to 3 really key points. So we think it's having the lowest possible cost per contact with the highest propensity for sales revenue, if applicable, and obviously that's not relevant to all contact centers, but certainly to most. And most importantly of all, with the best customer expressed experience. Now, the reason why this is important is because it helps shape your thinking. As we go through the 5 key points today, bear this in the back of your mind. How is it helping you to optimize each contact? And that helps the contact center go away from being viewed as a cost center to a real center of customer value and revenue generation in the business. So we went to Contact Babel, who I suspect some of you are familiar with. They're one of the sort of main people who do surveys within the contact center industry. And they asked contact center leaders, contact center decision makers, what were the key drivers for change in their operations? And not surprisingly, sort of harking back to the last slide, the number one thing that came up more or less across the board was customer satisfaction score. Every business is looking to improve their customer satisfaction score. And if there's a technology or an application or a process that you can improve that will enable you to do that, that's a real area of focus. The second and third ones are also very relevant and something we're going to touch on heavily today. Customers changing channel preferences. Obviously, most of you will be aware there's been a drive away from voice, particularly looking at sort of digital channels and SMS and the like. And thirdly, a need to reduce service costs. And again, this is something we see across the board. So again, while you're going through this today, think about these points and how you can make your business work smarter, not harder. Next, again, just a little bit of data gathered from Contact Babel here. They asked decision makers in the contact center what were the key areas that they were going to be looking to invest in 2018. So this was taken back in 2017. And the key ones that came up here, just to walk you through it. So the greens are areas where people have already invested. The reds are stuff they're not looking at. The key areas are the ones in the middle, the sort of yellow and beigey colored ones. That's areas that people will be looking to invest in the next 12 months and after the next 12 months. And the key technology trends that we saw sort of coming up were AI and machine learning, a real growth area, analytics, another growth area. And I think the three here, so we've grouped them together almost: web chat, mobile apps for customer service, and social media for customer service. All these new channels, disruptive channels coming into the contact center. So they were what people said in 2017, looking forward to 2018. We're going to do a little bit of a survey now of what you guys think for 2019. Now we're here in 2018. So we're going to launch a poll. Hopefully it should be popping up in front of you. So we sort of pulled out the sort of top 4 or so that we saw on the graph from last year. But we've also enabled you to put other areas. So you can put more than one if you should like. But we're going to give you sort of 30 seconds or so just to kind of click what's relevant to you at the moment.
Yeah, and whilst you guys are filling that in, we haven't got a lot of time today, but we can sort of hover on one topic for maybe 30 seconds, a minute longer as we go through this. So just interesting to know. We'll leave that open for another sort of, should we give it another sort of 10 seconds or so? Looks like we've got some results coming in already. Oh,
perfect, yeah.
We've got a winner. No, we don't.
Let's keep changing. Right, okay, if we close that off there, and we should be able to share that with you now. That should be coming up on your screen.
So analytics, fantastic. That is going to be covered at the end quite conveniently. So you have to hold on for that one. Self-service, that's where we're going to next. Fantastic. New channels, social, yeah, brilliant. So this is all great stuff. So we just hide that, I think. We need to.
Yeah,
and we are away. On to challenge number 1. This is something that we're all guilty of actually creating ourselves. It's the desire to self-service. Now, I'm going to talk about an example. It goes a little bit off piece from the contact center, but it does become very relevant. We're going to think about a shopper, a consumer in a retail environment. So this is us going out to get our groceries, our shopping, where we don't need anybody to help us. And we've all would have used one of these at some point. We've all used self-scan. We've all done the scan as you shop. We've paid at the pump because it's quick, it's easy. We don't need somebody to help us with this, okay? So only 17% of grocery shoppers consider human interaction important. Now, let's make this relevant to a contact center. Now, an agent-led interaction is around about the £4.50 in terms of a cost to serve. Self-service is about 5 pence. So that we can already see where this is starting to go, because there is still a need for a human interaction as well. When these interactions and transactions become a little more complex, and in the case of shopping, in this example, we're looking at, say, somebody looking for pharmaceuticals or medical, it's very important that we actually have that option to deal with a human. All right, we don't want to force people onto this self-service, but if we can enable the option for people to do that, then it becomes a particularly powerful sort of initiative and something that we think is going to be absolutely crucial moving into the next year. And this is very applicable. This value irritant model is talking about those transactions. I'm just going to take you through us quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you look at it, so the x-axis here is value to the customer, and the y-axis is value to you. So what you've got to start doing is putting your different types of interactions that you've got going on in your contact center into different buckets, and then deciding how you're going to deal with them. So the top right-hand corner, that's things that are of value to you and of value to the customer. Coming back to Ben's sort of pharmaceutical example, it's really important that you continue a real person interaction, and that's where you need to resource. Bottom right-hand corner, things that are of value to you and an irritant to the Sorry, things that are value to the customer and irritant to you. This is stuff you want to look to automate. Look at these self-service channels. Top left, things that are of value to you but an irritant to the customer. That's maybe collecting customer data. Make that as simple as possible. Make sure customers can do it quickly and easily, so it's as simple as possible. And finally, bottom right, things that are an irritant to you and irritant to the customer, interactions that simply do not need to happen and are annoying everyone. You need to eliminate them as quickly as possible.
So using that model, we can start to quantify opportunities within a business, within an organization, so what that could potentially look like in terms of benefits to be realized. So pie chart on the left, this is all the interactions coming in. It's very basic, but just for the purpose of this, going through this today. Those in the gray, we say, no, we absolutely want to retain that interaction. These could be the more complex inquiries. So this is products inquiries, these are complaints. We need to have that human element, and that is that is going to remain. However, dark blue, we could say, well, actually we could actually offer the option to self-serve here, and these are all the mundane things, the medial task, appointment setting, changing address, making a payment, paying a balance. We don't need to speak to somebody to do that. So if we can offer self-service to our customers, all of a sudden the adoption rates are actually quite amazing. And we're going to just talk about a quick example, because this is one of my favorite projects that we've run at IPI. Has this changed over? I think it should, hopefully you should be able to see white screen. There we go. There we go. It has a bit of a delay on that. So this was a retailer, the service as well, but they really wanted us to. They're really suffering with peaky call volumes, with lots of sort of dross in there, non-revenue generating calls. And they said, look, we want to increase our self-service levels. We want to give our agents the time to deal with these more complex inquiries. Now, we actually identified that we could offer out the option for somebody to self-serve, because people call on a mobile, which is generally 99% of the time now. It's a smartphone, it's an internet-enabled device. So we looked at the numbers coming in. If it was from a mobile, an 07 number, we said, well, actually, let's send them a text. Let's see if they want to do this online. If we're on a call on a channel to set an appointment, well, let's send them a text. So here's a link to a web portal. Here's all your details. We've captured it. You want to book an appointment? Just do it online. Now, the uptake on this was absolutely unbelievable, in that 60% of people who received the link actually chose to self-serve. So people want to do it, and we're deflecting these contacts out of the contact center as well. So those agents have got all this extra time to deal with these more complex inquiries, which ultimately is just making a massive impact on the bottom line. But there's also the customer satisfaction element as well to consider.
Great. Okay, which leads us really well into our challenge number 2, coping with peaks and troughs in demand. So once you've started to perhaps enable customers to self-serve, perhaps you've eliminated some of that unnecessary contact, there's always going to be contact coming into your business, and quite often that will be in a very inconsistent manner. You'll have a massive spike at some point during the day, and at other points it will be really quiet. And we think there's sort of a yin and a yang to dealing with that. For the expected times, when you can start forecasting accurately, that's where you're going to use workforce management, where you can start enabling tasks to be completed in the quieter times. And during those peaks, it's important to look at callback solutions in order to level them off. So let us sort of walk you through that in a little more detail. So WFM is never going to be sort of a perfect picture like you can see on the screen now. There's sort of 2 very common pitfalls when it comes to sort of scheduling staff. There's understaffing, quite common. If people are looking to cut costs, we'll just cut the number of agents. Suddenly you've got long hold times, you've got a poor customer experience, you've got agent burnout, and inevitably your customers are going to start leaving you, and your agents are going to start leaving you. At the other end of the spectrum, you want to give everyone brilliant service. You want to make sure that everyone gets that perfect interaction first time, and you start overstaffing. But again, what you end up with is high levels of agent idle time, a very inefficient operation that isn't sustainable. And that's simply working harder rather than smarter. So what you really want to do when it comes to a WFM solution, whether it be something you get from IPI or another solution that you have, it's important to make sure you're optimizing when your agents are doing tasks, whether it be one-to-ones, training, back office work, breaks at the most optimum time. And if you can do that, agents will be more comfortable with their workload, they'll be more relaxed and more professional on calls, and they're less likely to make mistakes, which ultimately is going to improve customer experience, which, as we've already seen, is one of the main drivers for any contact center operation. And the reverse of that is when you have big peaks in volume, which Ben is going to talk you through.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether was that the yin or the yang that we just went through there, but we're looking at technology here to actually ease the burden on a contact center. Okay, so talking about these callback solutions, they're hardly used, hardly anybody uses them, but actually customers are more demanding than ever, and we know that. And a lot of the sort of that we come up against, speaking with people here, is that people don't actually consider all the factors that go in here. So we've got people on hold. Okay, so we've got poor customer experience. We've got missed sales opportunities. People getting fed up, hanging up. They're gone. All that revenue is gone. Idle time not being utilised. Other areas of the organisation can have an enormous impact on the contact centre. We know that. It could be that marketing have launched a new campaign and tell you that you might get a few more calls in. It could be that you've got demands to train agents. You get a bunch of new starters. Well, all of a sudden, how do you do that? How do you start to fit that in to the working day? When you've got something like a callback solution, it's got your back, if you like. You can deal with these peaks. You can make sure that customers are feeling like they're being served, and we're promising them a callback within a set time or at a time that they choose that's more convenient to them. Yeah.
So just to sort of bring these together very briefly, we work with the Caravan and Motorhome Club. This is one of our flagship clients, if you like. So they're around 140 agent contact center, which I know, sort of looking over the sign-ups we have for this, is quite typical of who we've got sort of watching along today. And with IP integration, they implemented a new WFM solution. I mean, their old solution was quite inflexible, hard to make changes, holiday booking was difficult, new starters difficult to add, all the common pitfalls of a bad WFM solution. They also implemented our QBAC solution, which we call Q for Me. And that was particularly useful for them because they have a day a year, which is the start of their new booking season. Essentially, all their pitches for the next year go on sale, and they get huge call spikes. And so they implemented the Q for Me solution in order to sort of stave off those spikes and make the call volumes more manageable. But they still have it available throughout the year and can bring it online whenever it becomes necessary. So moving on to challenge number 3. Compliance, compliance, and more compliance. And this is we've very deliberately phrased it like that. Whenever I'm sort of talking to contact center leaders, customer experience people, generally when I bring up the word compliance, I see their faces sink. I see a bit of misery, to be honest, because it's not something typically that people get into the contact center industry to deal with. It's something you have to deal with. And the reason I think it's such a pain is because of these panics that you hear from a lot of people, you know, massive fines coming out. 43% of UK businesses hit by cybersecurity attacks. I mean, the number of organisations that roll off the tongue now that have been hit by them: British Airways, TalkTalk, Morrison's, Uber. All of that leads to brand damage. So what's the solution? We think that because data has never been so valuable or so desired, and technology has never been evolving faster, the simple solution is simply to outsource the problem to an expert in contact center compliance, in PCI compliance, in GDPR compliance. So what you're going to find is there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to compliance. So compliance is always going to be an ongoing consideration. But when you're thinking about compliance, it's important to balance your compliance objectives against creating a positive customer impression. As you can see, currently, around 82% of all contact centers still store card-sensitive data. This is something that doesn't need to happen if you can implement a solution which enables that data to never enter the contact center environment. So to briefly walk you through a real-life example, IPI work with a leading travel insurance provider. There are around 120 agents in total. What they found is that only a small number of calls into their contact center were actually PCI relevant, and yet the solution they had in place was making them pay for every single call into their contact center. So we implemented our PCI on-demand solution, which essentially enabled them to only pay for payment relevant calls coming into the contact center. And using that solution, they were able to reduce the number of controls, the number of things that their contact center leadership team had to think about, from over 300 down to just 9. Meaning they could spend more time focusing on the things that really matter to them, customer experience. And that's a typical example of working smarter and not harder. So challenge number 4, over to you, Ben.
Yes, so challenge number 4, agents and business leaders demanding flexibility. Now, let's just pop the next one up. So if we view the contact center on the diagram on the screen, we can see the situation which I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware of. And these are the sort of demands, the typical demands placed on a contact center from other areas of business, as well as those internally as well, from agents as well. Now, we know these demands are always increasing. And the point that we really want to make with this section is that when technology is viewed in a supportive capacity, all these demands can be met. Now, we know that all contact centers are different. No two contact centers are the same, and demands will vary between organizations, but some will remain constant. The privileged position that IPI sit in is that we're able to constantly monitor what technologies exist, and which ones are the most intelligent and those that are able to deliver real business results. We know, for example, that there are specific intelligent softwares and applications to deal with every demand on the list shown. We could run sessions on each and every one of them in turn, and we just don't have time today. If there's something on there that piques your interest, drop us a note and we'll pick that up to discuss with you later.
Perfect. So our final challenge, we have rattled through them today. Challenge number 5, tuning into what is really happening in your contact center. So we've covered off how to sort of look at self-service and elimination of unnecessary contact, coping with peaks and troughs, compliance, and sort of your agents demanding and your business demanding different things in the contact center, more flexibility. So how do you start tying that all together and understanding exactly what is going on in the contact center? Well, here at IP Integration, we think there's a sort of 3-tiered way of doing this. Firstly, contact interaction analytics, more commonly known as speech analytics, but now it extends across all different channels, all your digital channels, your SMS, your email, everything else. But for the purposes of today, we're going to focus predominantly on speech. And that's really going to give you a lot of cold, hard data to analyze. But sort of the reverse of that almost is post-call surveys. Post-call surveys are going to give you, your customers are going to be able to give you the real raw emotion of what they feel straight off the back of the call. And putting those two things together can give you a really valuable insight into what's happening in the contact center. And finally, wall boards. Wall boards are something that I think a lot of contact center centers have, but quite often they're not utilized effectively. They're something that's a bit of a tick in the box. Yes, we've got one of those, but you need to start thinking about how you can start displaying the most important, useful information to now enable your contact center to make decisions and changes in real time. So, firstly, sort of why I said in the previous slide where we're going to focus on voice or speech analytics the most. The average tweet has around only 15 words. The average sentence in an email has around 22 words. An average 5-minute phone conversation has 1,000 words in it. And if you equate that across a month in a 50-seat contact center operation, that equates to 100 million words said each month in the contact center. So once you've got that massive volume of data, what can you do with it? Really, the thing you can do with it is root cause analysis, and it feeds back into the value irritant model, which we went through earlier. You can start putting those different types of interactions into different buckets and then start identifying the best route forward. Now, the common pushback we get is contact analytics sounds great, brilliant, but the cost is just exorbitant. It's not viable. You spend more than you get out of it at the back end. And quite frankly, this simply is not the case anymore. For example, with IP integration, we now have a solution that enables you to take 10,000 calls, run analytics program with those calls, and deliver back meaningful results for less than the cost of one agent. And one operation we did this for said it was like turning the lights on in their contact center. And that really enables you to start making intelligent decisions, to start working smarter and not have to work harder. So once you've got all this data, what can you do with it? And this feeds back into wallboards. So IP integration has a wallboard solution. We call it Show Me. It's drag and drop, entirely customizable, and it enables you to pull in data sources and feeds from anywhere, whether it be speech analytics, post-call surveys, live data coming out of your phone system or your contact center solution. And the reason it's so important, as I said earlier, is it enables you to make real-time educated decisions about what's going on in the contact center. But it also enables you to prove to the wider business that you're hitting KPIs. If you can put a wallboard solution on the wall with green across the top of it saying, look, we are hitting each and every KPI, it proves to the business that you are not a cost center and you are a very, very valuable resource which is generating revenue for the business.
Yeah, to take that a step further, it was just worth mentioning, it was very popular over the World Cup, for example. We could pull in a live TV feed. But one of our clients, Caravan Motorhome Club, again, reason we talk about these guys so much is just Google, customer service awards for Caravan. These guys have got stacks of them. And how they use their wallboards is they actually incentivize their agents through a process of gamification based on post-call survey answers. So they use Ask Me, which is our post-call survey solution, and they use that to capture emotion there and then, and these results are then shown on the wallboards for the contact center to see, for the managers to see. They can log on from wherever they are and they can see what's going on in the contact center, who's winning, for that day.
So just to tie all these things together, again, another real life example. We work with a large UK-based utility company, and we, for them, did what I mentioned earlier, one of our 10,000 calls analysis. We essentially took those 10,000 calls, ran it through our analytics engine. And what we were able to find is over £500,000 worth of quantifiable savings. Now, these came from things like easy improvements that could be addressed to long silencers on call. So that sort of period uncertainty when neither person is speaking, maybe the agent's looking up some information. But all that's doing is breeding uncertainty and increasing average handle time, increasing cost. We also found easy ways they could reduce the identification and verification process. And also, and tying back into what Ben said earlier, self-service transactions. They found a lot of easy ways they could implement self-service to realize that huge saving. One thing they were also able to do is they were able to map their speech analytics against their post-call survey results. And what we could do from that is create what we called the language of 5. Their post-call surveys scored each call from 1 to 5. And they were able to, using speech analytics, say, this is the language that our agents are using when they get scored a 5 by a customer. And from that, they can start mapping those words and phrases and essentially create a training program where they told their agents to use more of those words and phrases in order to increase customer satisfaction. And they were able to prove, after doing a second analytics process with us 4 months later, that those scores had gone up significantly by implementing the language of 5. One final point to bring up, during that same piece of analysis, we were also able to identify a major security and compliance breach. Now, this wasn't something that they particularly wanted to hear, but we were able to see that on a lot of their calls, even though they had a pause and resume PCI compliant solution, a lot of their calls still had toxic data. They still had card numbers in the call recordings, which was a massive breach. So we were able to say to them, this is where the problem is, and this is how you could counteract that problem. And we were able to implement one of our PCI compliance solutions.
So, few other clients on the screen there. As we mentioned earlier, you probably may not have heard of IPI, but you possibly interacted with one of our technologies or the outcomes of one of our projects as well. Obviously, hope you can sort of get. We love this stuff. We enjoy the process of coming in, having a look, and suggesting tips and tricks and methods that we can improve. We're using technology as a supporting function as well. We are going to go through a couple of questions that came in on the chat field, but there's some contact details on the screen there for myself and Isaac. Please feel free to get in contact if you've got any questions. Please do give us a call, drop us a note. So what have we?
So we've just got some questions to go through here. So this one for you, Ben.
David, can I get a copy of the slides? Yes, you're my new favourite person, David.
We've got one coming in from Sarah saying you haven't mentioned chatbots. Is this something that you guys are seeing in contact centres? Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. And we didn't mention that today, but I think definitely over the last year there's been a very large adoption in chatbots. We mentioned sort of AI at the top of the program, and it really ties into some of the self-service elements that Ben was touching on earlier, where you can get someone to interact with a chatbot rather than having to deal directly with a customer. So yes, absolutely, it's something that I think we'll probably do a webinar on later in the year, because it is a massive growing area, and it is something that absolutely IP integration have a solution to cater for.
Yeah, one from Charlotte. With the callback, what if my agents don't get a chance to call them back? So I think the question is really, what if we're too busy? Well, yeah, so we can offer out to people on the line. We can say, look, would you like us to give you a call back when we become free, or would you like a call at a specific time? what we do is we actually take that person out of the queue and we hold them almost like in a holding pen, if we to imagine. We hold them there, and then when we get close to that time, whether that's one that they've chosen or within, say, the hour that we promised, or for example, it could be 2 hours, whatever we want it to be, we then drop that call in on the high priority. We pop it in front of an agent. We give them a little whisper as to why they're making this call out, what the call's about. We capture some information from the customer when they're going through the enrollment process, and so we just prepare the agent for that interaction. Call goes out. Now, 9 times out of 10, the call connects because that's the time when the customer asks for a call back. But if there is a time, if they don't answer, for example, we've missed them, they're driving, whatever, that just basically goes back into the holding pattern. Now, if they then call back in, we scrub it, we take it out the holding pattern. But yeah, so it doesn't get lost. I think is just to answer your question.
I think we've just exhausted our half an hour there.
We've just
gone over it.
31. I think we managed to squeeze quite a lot in, actually. Quite
yeah, I appreciate we've gone through that at a rather rapid pace, but thank you for bearing with us, guys. As I say, if there is any other questions that you guys want to ask, feel free to pop us an email and we'll be very, very happy to get back to you. But for now, thank you very much for your time. It has been greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much.